Humanity had always wondered if it was alone in the universe. When the Zirac Dominion arrived, that question was answered with fire and destruction. The alien warships descended upon the outer colonies without warning, their sleek, obsidian hulls cutting through the void. Their message was simple: submit or be annihilated. Humanity had fought wars before, but nothing like this. The Zirac weren't just another empire, they were conquerors, expanding relentlessly across the galaxy. Their fleets wielded energy-based weaponry far beyond anything Earth had ever encountered. Plasma beams seared through human ships as if they were made of paper, while their shields absorbed everything thrown at them. The United Defense Fleet scrambled to respond. Earth's best warships, armed with ballistic cannons, coil guns, and nuclear warheads, engaged the enemy over Mars. It was a massacre. Human weapons couldn't penetrate Zirac defenses, and their energy weapons shredded entire fleets in minutes. The UDF fought bravely, but bravery wasn't enough. The Zirac broadcast their demands across all human channels. Their commander, a cold, calculating figure with reptilian features, spoke in flawless English. "Surrender your world. Your weapons are obsolete. You are but insects before a storm." Earth had little choice but to consider the unthinkable. The Zirac had wiped out the orbital defenses of every colony in their path. The lunar defense platform, once thought impregnable, was now nothing more than a burning husk in space. Thousands were dead, and humanity's mightiest fleet had been humiliated. But if the Zirac thought humanity would kneel, they had miscalculated. Deep within the Sol system, in a classified UDF research facility orbiting Europa, a weapon was being prepared. One final, desperate attempt to level the battlefield. A weapon that didn't rely on energy beams or guided missiles. A weapon built on the oldest principle of warfare, brute force. The Zirac had fought countless civilizations, each more advanced than the last. Yet none had ever used relativistic railguns because no other species had ever needed to. Humanity wasn't the strongest, the fastest, or the most advanced. But it was stubborn. It adapted. It survived. And now, it was about to teach the Zirac a lesson in physics. Admiral Thomas Greaves stood on the bridge of the UEDF Retribution, watching the enemy fleet advance. The Zirac had every advantage except one. They had never faced a weapon like this. The railgun was humanity's last gamble. A mass driver capable of accelerating tungsten slugs to a fraction of light speed. No guidance systems, no explosive payloads, just pure kinetic devastation. The Zirac relied on energy shields to absorb plasma fire and deflect particle beams. But shields couldn't disperse momentum. No technology could stop an object moving that fast. For years, scientists had debated the practicality of such a weapon. Power constraints, heat buildup, structural stress, all problems that made railguns inefficient. But inefficiency didn't matter when survival was at stake. The Retribution had been rebuilt around the railgun, its reactors dedicated to a single purpose, delivering one unstoppable shot. Greaves had fought in countless battles, but never won this hopeless. Earth had lost every engagement so far. The Zirac had mocked humanity's outdated weapons, laughing at its reliance on crude projectiles. That arrogance had blinded them. They saw kinetic weapons as primitive. But physics didn't care about superiority. The plan was simple. Let the Zirac close in, overconfident, expecting another easy slaughter. The Retribution would lie in wait, charging the railgun for its first real test. The enemy flagship, a towering dreadnought bristling with plasma cannons, was the target. Greaves knew the Zirac would never expect a projectile traveling at near-relativistic speeds. By the time they saw it, they'd already be dead. The bridge was silent as the gun primed. The slug, a solid hunk of tungsten, sat in the chamber, waiting to be unleashed. Greaves gave the order. The coil arrays hummed, the electromagnetic rails crackled with energy, and then the shot fired. No explosion, no dramatic flash of light. Just a silent release of a projectile that moved too fast for the eye to track. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Zirac flagship ceased to exist. The slug tore through its shields, armor, and core systems in a single instant, reducing a vessel the size of a city to a field of expanding debris. The Zirac fleet hesitated. For the first time, they knew fear. The Zirac fleet recoiled, their perfect formation breaking apart in confusion. Their command ship, an indomitable fortress of alien engineering, was gone. No shields, no escape pods, just a spreading cloud of molten wreckage. For the first time in the war, humanity had drawn blood. The retribution didn't wait. The railgun's capacitors strained as they recharged, but the crew had trained for this moment. The next shot wouldn't take them by surprise. Zirac vessels scrambled, their captains shouting frantic orders, but their ships had never been designed for evasive maneuvers. They had always fought as undisputed conquerors, marching forward with absolute confidence. Now, they were prey. Greaves gave the order. The railgun fired again. Another ship, destroyed in an instant. The Zirac attempted to retaliate. Plasma lances streaked across the void, targeting the retribution. The ship rocked under the impacts, armor melting, but it held together. Human engineers had designed it knowing it wouldn't have shields. Every inch of its hull was reinforced to absorb damage, to keep it fighting longer than any warship had a right to. The fleet rallied. Inspired by the Retribution's success, UDF warships moved in. Zirac defenses were faltering, their shields struggling against missile barrages. For the first time, they weren't fighting an inferior enemy, they were fighting an enemy that had adapted. The railgun fired again. Another ship gone. Panic spread through the Zirac ranks. Their ships were not invincible, their tactics not foolproof. They had relied on fear to keep their enemies in check. But humanity had never known when to quit. The battle turned. Zirac ships began to retreat, their formation dissolving. The Retribution locked onto the largest remaining vessel, their last hope for regrouping. One final shot. The railgun discharged. The Zirac battleship split apart mid-flight, its remnants scattering into the void. The survivors fled. For the first time since the war began, humanity had won. The Zirac had never lost a war. They had crushed every species that stood against them, turned entire civilizations into ash. But now, they ran. News of the battle spread fast. Across the galaxy, empires that had once dismissed humanity took notice. A species that the Zirac had deemed primitive had not only survived but forced them into retreat. The balance of power had shifted. The Zirac, humiliated, sent an envoy. They no longer spoke in threats. There were no demands, no ultimatums. Just one question: what do you want? For the first time, humanity had a seat at the table. No longer a fledgling race begging for recognition. Now, it was a force to be reckoned with. The UDF began mass-producing railgun warships. Earth entered alliances once thought impossible. The same species that had ignored humanity now sought its favor. But Admiral Greaves knew the truth. This wasn't the end. The Zirac would remember. They would adapt, just as humanity had. War would come again. The only question was whether humanity would be ready. Standing aboard the Retribution, he looked at the wreckage of the battle, the debris of what was once an unstoppable armada. He spoke only once, his words recorded for every soldier in the fleet. They thought we were weak. They thought we were lesser. Now they know the truth. Humanity doesn't lose. We learn.